This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode, as always, brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, take the guesswork out of buying NBA or NFL tickets with Game Time. Of course, we've got the NBA Finals starting next week with the Celtics and likely Mavericks. We'll see. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Greg, let's start with the headlines. We'll begin down in Miami, actually. Jaylen Waddle agrees to a 3-year, $84.75 million contract, $76 million guaranteed. Now, of course, some of this can be funny money. We might find out what the real deal is in about 24, 36 hours. But before we get to a Patriots kind of point of view here on this, let me just ask you about your thoughts on the deal. Jaylen Waddle gets a 3-year deal. He's down there with Tyreek Hill. What do you think?
So the AAV right now is like $28 million. Is that what they're saying? 28 plus, I think.
I'll do the math. It's 3 years, 84.75. So
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw that earlier. So, to put that in perspective, A.J. Brown is top of the market at 32. Amon-Ra St. Brown is next at 30, just barely like a squeak over Tyreek Hill at 30. So the Dolphins are paying two receivers $58 million. If this was any other team, like say the Eagles, and they got Devontae Smith done for $25 million a year. If this was a different team like the Eagles, who I've known to be pretty smart with their cap and how they do things, and they're forward thinking. They see things coming down the line. I'd be like, okay, well, this is the way things are going. But I don't feel that way about the Dolphins. And, again, we're talking about, whether it's Devontae Smith, yeah, you could say he's a number 2, but he has the potential to be a number 1 everywhere else. I think a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a number 2. He's a slot receiver. Calvin Ridley, who we talked about, who we're going to talk about more in a minute. To me, he's a number 2, and these guys are getting number 1 contracts. And that's sort of my issue with all of it. And I just don't think the Dolphins are very smart with their cap. They're going to have to pay Tua, which we all know. If they pay Tua, whatever they're going to do there. I just don't understand the need to pay number 2 receivers number 1 rate. And here's the other thing, Nick, especially in this day and age where you have receivers coming out of the woodwork in the draft every year. Like you would have figured that receiver would start getting treated almost, not the same, but at least obviously number 1 receivers are always going to be number 1 receivers, and they're going to be difference makers and what have you. But number 2 receivers, as long as you plan a year ahead of time and you draft somebody, you get them into your program and start repping them, you should be able to have a draft pick at a rookie salary doing what that guy's doing. So to me, paying a number 2 as a number 1, especially when you're paying a number 1 as well, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, paying a guy as a number 1 when you already are paying somebody as a number 1. Now you're paying 2 guys as number 1s, and to me, you can't have 2 number 1s. Hopefully people followed that. It is, by the way, 28.25, the AAV. So $28.25 million is the average annual value. Does this make you think about Calvin Ridley at all differently, Greg, if you're the Patriots?
No. I thought about it, and, I wouldn't say it's cut and dry, because I will say I've sort of vacillated between, saying that, people – because at the time, the Calvin Ridley contract, I was of the perspective that $25 million was too much for Calvin Ridley. Or what did he end up getting? I'm just looking. $23 million.
Yeah.
And the Patriots offered 20. I think it was reported that guaranteed money is $50 million. So it's basically $25 million for 2 years. So that's basically what his contract is. I thought that was too expensive. I thought the Patriots were at the top of the market at 20 for Calvin Ridley. But I remember hearing at the time a lot of people saying, in a few months, that contract's going to look like peanuts compared to other people. And I'll admit they have a point. It's got me thinking, but still, at the end of the day, paying a number 2 is a number 1, and the whole draft aspect of this, that you should be able to draft receivers every year, get them into your program, and that you should just be recycling through guys on rookie contracts. To me, I'm still of the opinion, and I will admit it's closer, but I still think that the Patriots made the right decision on Calvin Ridley.
All right, let's get to your report from earlier this week before we get to OTA notes. The red flag report, I'll call it, for the lack of a better term. Let me first ask you, Greg, how many executives did you actually speak with in total for this piece?
So it started out as there's one guy, and I reach out to a bunch of guys, but this time of year, post draft, it's hard to get in touch with people. Like they're either taking vacations or they're working on their teams or what have you. But every year there's one senior personnel executive in the AFC who I've talked to for years, who I trust, and he gives me the straight dope out of his team's scouting reports on these guys. And that's sort of like, I go to him just to see where things are trending, and then if there's more work, more people that I need to talk to, then I'll do that. And there was one player, Javon Baker, and what I was told, and this was he was reading straight out of his team's dossier on Javon Baker and, their decision making, that caused me to go to 3 other league executives just to see whether this was accurate, whether it was in the right ballpark, whether this was just a red herring, just doing due diligence to make sure, like, I didn't want to put a bunch of stuff out there that, of course, maybe wasn't true, but it was all, every single source confirmed everything that I put into the report. And I will say that there were a couple things that the initial executive said that I couldn't vet with other league sources, and so I left that stuff out.
All right, good. I'm glad you said that, because I do want to get into the nature of the reporting, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But so we got, like 4 total executives that you spoke with. Did anything that the executives say, Greg, surprise you?
I will say somebody said that Jalen Polk has a red flag, but wouldn't go into details, and that surprised me. And I also checked that out with 2 other people, and they said, I don't know what he's talking about. We didn't have anything. We thought he was a clean prospect. And so basically I'd disregard that. I mean, I put it in there just to, make sure that, one team's viewpoint is there, but I also put 2 other people saying they didn't think it was true. So that surprised me. I had heard about the Caden Wallace stuff, that there's some questions about how much he loves football, that he might be lazy, that he might be entitled. That's been out there for a while on him. The tight end, Bell, that stuff was known, on him. Milton, that stuff was known on him. So and Baker, we all knew Baker had things. Some of it is documented, but the extent and also the role that Gerald Baker, Javon's father, plays in all of this, and the potential monkey wrench that he could throw into things, that surprised me.
Which of the claims, I'll tell you which bugged me the most, is obviously the gun stuff with Javon Baker and the executive saying that there were multiple incidents. Is that the one claim that really jumps out at you the most as far as troubling?
Overall, as far as, I guess that would be fair. I mean, especially in light of Jack Jones and some other things. But I do think, when I read gun stuff, I don't know if I'm desensitized to it, Nick, but when I read gun stuff in today's day and age and down south and, younger kids, it's not all that surprising to me anymore. So I wouldn't say it's a red flashing light for me when I see, multiple gun incidents. A little bit, I would say it's more of a yellow light for me, but in talking to people, I think Javon left to his own devices, and if he's left alone in Foxborough, and you worry about that. I mean, because we ran into that, and I'm not comparing him to Aaron Hernandez or anything, but Aaron Hernandez got into trouble when people from Bristol came, when he was hanging out with his boys. The situation around Javon Baker, if that follows him to Foxborough, then to me, that's the biggest sort of question mark that I have in this is like, can this kid has a chance. And overall, I put this on the record just to get on the record, give people the circumstances, the total picture about this player. But really, once they become a Patriot, that stuff is now they have a clean slate. So yeah, that stuff happened in the past. You made stupid mistakes when you were a kid in college. You did this and that. Okay. To a very degree, we've all made stupid mistakes when we were in college and high school. But now you're a professional. And so now you get a clean slate, but now you need to be on the straight and narrow. I'm just worried about the influence of Baker's father and how that could affect his mentality as far as being a New England Patriot wide receiver. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. Seriously, I did it before. I was like, do. I did some on the golf recently. That was fun, watching along. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat predictions on Tuesdays, which increases your chances of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. This week on PrizePicks, I'm really into the hockey, and the NBA is kind of a snooze. Go Celtics. Can't wait to watch you guys against Kyrie. This week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at the hockey board, selecting Gustav Forsling over 1.5 shots on goal. Sam Bennett, hated in Boston, over 4 hits. Alexander Barkov, over 0.5 assists. That's easy. That's like taking money from a baby. And Chris Kreider, over 2.5 shots on goal. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first match deposit up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
All right, so Greg, I do have some questions about the nature of the comments from some of these executives, and I wanted to go through some of the comments that I had issue with, and I wanted more from some of these executives. So let's look at one from an exec talking about Javon Baker. Says multiple fights, suspensions at Alabama, went to jail, charge was dropped, there's multiple gun incidents and some other stuff. I was uncomfortable reading that because of, how vague those comments were. I felt like I needed more specifics, Greg. Multiple fights. What were the specifics behind the fights? Like, what are the details? Was it over a girl? Was it, was he part of a scrum? Did somebody hit him first? The suspensions at Alabama, without much detail. Well, why was he suspended? That really is kind of at the latitude of the head coach of why he would suspend somebody, especially, Baker was like the 3rd, 4th, 5th wide receiver on the roster at best at that point. So what'd you make of kind of those comments? Because to me, I just felt like they lacked detail. They lacked some specifics.
I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I think, and I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm right or vice versa. I'm just coming at it from a different perspective. I think you're coming at it from, that, you want a detailed report on this guy. Like, you want like a deep dive into this guy. If this is going to be out there, go all the way and do a deep dive. Where I just think I was giving a service to my readers, giving you basically verbatim from a team's dossier on Javon Baker on, and they're more like pass fail onto whether the guy's on their draft board, or, they certainly, it's a pass fail type of thing. Like, okay, like we can deal with a couple of these things, but now you're, 5, 6, 7 things, like now they're off. And so my reporting was more on a pass fail level than I think you wanted the whole shebang, which I understand, but to me, I was giving you a team perspective instead of like, the life and times of Javon Baker.
What would you say to people who might say it's unfair to kind of throw out some of the vague stuff that these execs said without a full dive into the young man, because we're not really getting the specifics? What would you say to those people?
I don't really know. I got these things verified by 3 or 4 different league execs that they said like they all had this stuff.
Right.
They all had him off the board because of this stuff. And so, I mean, he's being drafted to play football. He's not being vetted to be the president of the United States, even though we don't do much vetting of presidents of the United States anymore. I think it's fair if an NFL team and multiple NFL teams confirmed it, say these were his concerns about Javon Baker, I think it's fair.
All right, Joe Milton. This was a comment that really bothered me because I think it's unfair to Milton big time. So the exec told you he's a partier, or at least he was earlier in his career. Now, I thought that was unfair because it doesn't sound like that person knows whether or not he's still a partier. So to kind of put that out in the ether, that bugged me. What's your reaction to that?
I guess I would say that's fair. But I would also say, I think from his perspective, it's, and you might believe that people change. I think a lot of NFL teams don't believe people change that all that much. And there was one thing that I left out. There was a comment, and like I left it out of Javon Baker, and I think it's sort of apt with, Joe Milton. I think a lot of these NFL teams don't think that guys change all that much. And like one league executive said to me, he's like, he mentioned Rashee Rice, and he was like, look, Rashee Rice worked until he didn't. And like, basically he was like, the point is like, some of these guys with checkered pass, some of them work, some of them don't, but they, in their opinion, the vast majority, don't really change. So anything that's in their background, it's at least notable for them to keep an eye on.
I wanted to get to Jaheim Bell, because the executive on Bell said the questions or concerns were personality fit, diva, selfish, party habits. Generally speaking, Greg, when you talk to guys like this, when you talk to executives and other people within the league, like how many guys are divas in the NFL? And with that in mind, like relatively speaking, when somebody says that guy's a diva, would they say, everybody's a diva if they were a diva, or do they save the diva tag for the true divas of the divas, if that makes sense to you?
In my experience, I only hear that when it's truly an issue with a guy. And one thing I do want to point out, Nick, is that, and I'm sure because I know you podcasted on this, and I didn't listen to it, and no reason for that other than like I block out the noise. I report what I report, and then that's it. It's just how I do that. That's how I've always done the job.
Right.
And a lot of people will, of course, glob on to the media's things in this thing and take issues. But I will say, on the whole, I was on especially. I got to go back and look at Baker, but Bell, Milton, other people, like I think we gave the pros, and you can see why the Patriots drafted these guys. Like I was surprised to learn that like this executive was really hot, like he really liked Jaheim Bell. in terms of he thought he was a good bet, has the potential to be a number 2 tight end in the league. That kind of like surprised me. So I think there was I tried to balance it out as much as possible,
right,
to get both sides of the coin.
Well, for transparency's sake, since you didn't listen to the pod because you don't like me, I will tell you what I said. I actually had beef with the executives. I didn't say anything about how you handled the story, Greg, or how you wrote the and I was asked about that in the comments. And my whole thing was, I had a Patreon member ask me, well, what is Greg's responsibility in reporting this stuff? And I do want to get to that in a minute, because I think that's interesting, and it's, people will criticize you for it. I want you to kind of tell people why you report these things the way you do and what goes into it. But I told that person, I said, look, I'm not going to sit here and pontificate on what Greg did. I'm doing a podcast with Greg this week. I will ask Greg the questions I have, because I want to give Greg the fair opportunity to say, this is my point of view and this is what I did. I'm not going to go on some, solo mission and be like, oh, well, I'm wondering this. So my podcast was more about what the executives said and how
the Twitterverse loves that.
I had some
stuff. What are you gonna? Yeah. When are you gonna call out Bedard for that? I mean, it happens like all the time. Yeah. So
but I had some issues with the vagueness of what the executives were saying. That I wanted to ask you the questions directly about, the story, so you could answer them. And I will say this off of what Greg just said. In fairness, as part of Javon Baker, one league source, one league exec told Greg, I think there's a good side of the kid, and I think, in the right situation, it'll be all right. Inside, he's not a terrible kid. It's just his environment with the father has been so bad, and he's been living his life of entitlement. As far as Jaheim Bell, an exec said, I think looking at his stuff, he's probably more of a light maintenance than heavy. More had to do with disciplinary issues in high school. A lot of the stuff that he was, when he was younger. So also on Joe Milton, another quote, but by all accounts, he was a good kid, just immature. It's a concern because he's 24 years old. So, there are quotes in this story that are telling you nobody's coming out and saying that these kids are bad. They're just telling you this is what we have on the record. All right. So as far as I did have an issue with the Jaheim Bell selfish thing that was said, I wanted to get your feel on this, because just looking at Bell as a football player, when he was out at South Carolina, he played all over the place, right? I mean, he played in the slot, he played outside, he played at the backfield, he played at tight end. To me, that would kind of scream unselfish. Was he saying selfish on the field, off the field? What was your read on that, if you had one?
In my opinion, the way I understood it, it was sort of off the field stuff.
Okay.
As far as and I think it goes more towards like being a teammate, and this goes for any sport, including sports that I've coached or coach. Certainly you have players that will, if you tell them to do something, they'll do it. But does that make them the best teammate in the world? Does that make them unselfish? In my opinion, no. I've certainly coached kids who, will do the right thing. Will do the right thing in certain respects, but in their heart of hearts, that they're inherently selfish. So to me, that wasn't an outlier.
Same kind of question that I asked you about the diva thing. And I'm just trying to get into the mind of league executives, right? And how they kind of talk to you and their descriptions of these guys. Because we see multiple times in your story that they bring up party habits, partier. My reaction to that is always college kids party. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And I would imagine if I was a starting quarterback of a football team, I might, really take advantage from time to time with certain situations where I could go, people I could hang out with. Is this another one, Greg, that it's kind of relatively speaking, that when somebody says he was a partier, it means that from what they've heard, he goes kind of above and beyond the regular quote unquote college party?
Yeah, I would just say it's more of a yellow flag, red flag in terms of, now that he's a pro with money in his pocket, is he going to do the right things, or is he going to be all about the nightlife? And also the ladies. There are plenty of guys that I hear things certainly about that where they're more interested, and there's guys that I've covered. For example, like because it's relative to the Patriots because it's Eliot Wolf and he came from the Packers. When I covered the Packers, there was a talented tight end on that team, Jermichael Finley, out of Texas, who I'm sure the book on him coming out would have been a lot like Bell, probably a lot like Milton in terms of undisciplined, lacks emotional maturity, selfish, diva, Finley was all those things. The Patriots still drafted him. I wouldn't say super high, but I especially like reading about Bell and some of the other guys. And the point of the thing, and this sort of evolved as I talked to more and more people in the league about Baker specifically, and a couple other guys, that they were scratching their heads a little bit, saying like the Patriots, took more risk in their opinion than they have in the past. Normally Bill takes risks on like one guy. Like Barmore was a quote unquote risk, which we've talked about over the years.
Yeah.
And I think he has proven those people decidedly wrong, which we've also talked about. A lot of the issues that the red flags on him, I haven't seen them on film at all. And he's been a really good player and earned that contract extension. But I think that, you look at it, when I look at, Jermichael Finley and some of the guys in this class and some of the guys that the Packers used to draft when Eliot Wolf was there, like it seems familiar to me. I mean, they definitely take risks, but they're calculated risks. And I think the totality of the comments on all of these draft prospects shows you why they might have made the selections and been okay with it.
Just a couple more for you before we get to OTA notes in Drake Maye's day yesterday. How much background is done during these conversations? How much background work by you is done, Greg, to know that, all right, these sources, the people I'm speaking with, I feel good about. They're giving me other information as well, which I have another question for you about that. But how much background done here?
A sizable amount. I mean, it depends. Like Javon Baker, I heard the comments. They somewhat surprised me. I knew there were issues with him, but I took them directly to a source close to Javon Baker, and I read them to them. And there were a couple things, like I said, that I left out that they took issue with. Other than that, they confirmed everything. I did not put that in there, but that happened.
That's really what my next question was. When you're reporting on something like this, how do you decide what to share and what not to share?
Basically, if it's just run of the mill stuff, and that, that I've heard from a couple different people, then I let it go. But if it's more salacious, then I feel I have a duty to check on that and make sure it's at least in the ballpark, if not totally confirmed. And so the Javon Baker stuff was completely nailed down.
Last one for you on this before we get to OTAs. When you write something like this, what do you see as your role? Because, some people might say, well, Greg, why didn't you, weigh in more with your opinion? My take on this, and maybe I'm wrong, my take on this is, I'm going to guess what your viewpoint is here. This is a report, and I am reporting what people are telling me. I'm doubling, tripling, quadruple checking sources, and what they give me, I put out there. And in this kind of report, it's not necessarily my duty to give you my opinion. What would you say, though, is your role with something like this?
I view my role in sort of, what I do at BSJ from my film work and, scouting stuff, advanced scouting on opponents and things like that. I sort of view this as people coming here and getting sort of like the inside information, unvarnished information that the teams have, inside scoop on, not only on the field. We don't delve too much into off the field, but we're talking about, they're welcoming in, 7 or 8 new draft picks into their organization that, really, I don't know about other people, But I mean, I think a lot of this pre-draft industrial complex is just what we see on film, what we see on the field, where the teams are making a lot of these decisions are being made on the stuff that I'm telling you, as far as work ethic and character concerns and things like that. Like, and so I view my role is to basically like sort of take you inside like a NFL front office. And like, this is the information that they had to work with. These are what other teams thought of the Patriots draft picks and why they were available to the Patriots. And then I let the people make their decisions. I don't know any of these guys from a hole in the wall. And so, like I said, their past is their past. Before they got to New England, their past is the past. But we need to get as clear a picture as possible on who they are entering the Patriots so that we have all the information at our disposal as they go forward, and we look for certain things that might trip them up. Like, for example, I came to the Patriots to cover the Patriots for the Globe in the middle of the 2010 season when Gronk and Hernandez were rookies. And if I had covered the team at the time when those guys were drafted, I would have done like a background check on all these guys and probably would have published the stuff about Aaron Hernandez. I mean, that was stuff when I came to cover the team and it's midway through the year and he's hitting first before Gronk. I think it took me like one game to be like, who the hell is this Aaron Hernandez and why the hell did he last until the fourth round? And so then I called 3 or 4 league executives, and then they told me exactly why. I never used any of that stuff because as far as I could tell, it was, he had become a Patriot. He was being a good Patriot from everything that everybody was telling me inside. And so I didn't feel the time was right. But I think when these guys become Patriots, I think everybody needs all the information at their disposal, what the Patriots have, what other teams have. If other teams have it, the Patriots have it. They made these decisions. And so I think it's just to color in the picture of this player as they enter the Patriots program. I think it's my duty to give a completest picture as possible.
By the way, are these executives interested in kind of giving you the specifics in the dirt, or is this a thing where they're only going to give you so much? Like if you kept prying and prying and prying, would they say, all right, yeah, Javon Baker punched somebody in the face in the back of a club, and or is it more like we're going to give you what you get, Greg, and then we move on?
I don't know this, but I would be surprised if they have complete like FBI background checks on all these guys, and they know. I think what I gave you is what most teams have, sort of generalities on the issues with some of these players. The Celtics are in the NBA Finals, and I can tell you, Nick is very excited. Celtics will have home court, so possibly 4 games at TD Garden. How awesome would it be to go to a game and experience that atmosphere and get to hate on Kyrie? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat. I love that. I have to see the view from my seat before I purchase any tickets. It's right there in the app. And their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I was just looking at the app for Game 1 and saw a ton of discounts being offered. Like, seriously, it says like, $49 off, $100 off. Of course, the price tags are expensive. Not outrageous if you're a hoop head and planning on going to the NBA Finals. Like I said, love getting a panoramic view from the seat in the app before I buy. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Purchase the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets. Lowest price. Guaranteed.
All right, let's get to actual football now. On the field, OTAs. Greg, you were there yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday evening. It was your second opportunity to get your eyeballs on the team. Let's start with 3 things that you liked.
I liked overall, number one, Drake Maye overall. I thought he had a better day. Again, they've had other practices that we haven't been privy to, but as far as the two public practices that we've been able to see, I thought he looked a little bit more comfortable. Still a long ways to go in that, but I mean, there were 3 beautiful passes that he made. One down the right sideline, touch deep pass to Tyquan Thornton, hit him perfectly in stride. It was beautiful. He had a pump and out to Juju Smith-Schuster, which was really nice. And then he had another. He sort of surveyed the field, came around to the left, pumped to move somebody, and threaded a pass in. To me, that was impressive. That was the first time, and I'm not saying he should have shown this to me in the first practice or what have you, but this was the first time where I was like, okay, there it is. There's the flashes. And I'm not saying that I was underwhelmed by Drake Maye in the first practice. It is what it is. It's the nature of the beast with OTAs and about how this is really school. But this was the first time where I was like, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, to hear about Drake Maye, to hear, you talk about him, and I saw multiple people that watched him yesterday, a lot of the same stuff, right, that they're saying. And I would just say this, like, it's a baby step process for Drake, and we all, at least I understand that. I know you understand that. You and I aren't so wrapped up in the reps and the rotation right now. Like, let's get to mandatory minicamp. Let's get to camp. Let's see how he continues to progress, if he does continue to progress. I just take it as a good sign, right? I mean, it's a good sign that he was better this week than what he was last week. That means he's progressing. He's picking up some of the things that they're teaching him, and that's going down the right road. Something else that you liked?
The aforementioned Javon Baker. I thought he had. Now, he did factor into an interception, sort of tipped the ball right to the defensive back. That Zappy threw to him. But I thought he had, 3 really nice contested catches down the field and showed glimpses of, why he thinks so highly of himself in his social media videos. And, there's a lot of inconsistency in his play, and you see that, but you do see the upside. So I was intrigued by Baker.
I have a question about that, Greg. Cortland Sutton, the report comes out that he wants $15-16 million a year. If you're the Patriots, are you less willing to kind of bend over backwards for somebody like Cortland Sutton? Are you less willing to give up, say, a 3rd-round pick for Sutton because you want to see what Baker can actually do here up until training camp, or would you pull the trigger on a deal like that for Sutton?
I like to give myself options, and considering Baker's issues off the field and how I think he's unpredictable. I think, like I said, like I reported, one league executive thought that half the league had him off the board. And so, and this sort of conversation just reminds me a little bit of like Kayshon Boutte last year.
Yeah.
Where, people were intrigued and like, oh, well, we don't need to do X, Y, and Z because Kayshon Boutte's going to get healthy and he's going to pop and, all this stuff. And we certainly saw some flashes from him as well in, training camp and other avenues. But, look where he is now with the whole gambling probe hanging over his head and among other things. And so, to me, the Cortland Sutton discussion has to do with it's primarily on what do you think his ceiling is? Can he be a number 1? And if so, and you can lock him into $15-16 million, looks like chump change right now. If you can lock him into that and you think he's going to be good and productive, I would do it. Again, the Packer way is to have, 5-6 receivers in the pipeline that could hit at any moment.
All right, the third and final thing that you liked about the second OTAs that you watched.
I like Jacoby Brissett. A little bit more than I did in the first practice. I think when you see him on the field, and it's not overwhelming or anything like that, but just like, he obviously is very comfortable in the offense. He knows what he's doing. He delivers a nice pass. He's a very professional quarterback. And so, like, I feel the team is in good hands. I know he's not the biggest name in the world, but I liked what I saw out of him.
All right, let's flip it now. 3 things you didn't like.
The offensive line, just the whole thing. There were City So watched. He did not take part. So that threw things into a mix. So like Mafi was playing left guard. Somebody named Michael Jordan was playing right guard. Nick Leverett went from guard in the first practice, where I think he was on the first team offensive line, to playing center on the second team offensive line, but also splitting time with Mafi at center. Then there was another group. I'm trying to find it, where left tackle Vidar. This is when Drake Maye is doing. This is for Drake Maye's team reps. Left tackle was Vidarian Lowe. Left guard was Andrew Stuber, who used to be a tackle and not a very good one. Center is Charles Turner. Again, I don't know who that is. Right guard is Ryan Johnson. I don't think he's. That's the 98.5, the Sports Hub, Ryan Johnston. And right tackle was Tyrone Wheatley. And at one point, there was a sequence where, and not for this group, there were other groups involved in this, where Jacoby Brissett was running for his life so much. There was immediate pressure. And I will say they were doing third downs in this practice, so there was exotic stuff coming from the defense. And again, let's also remind people that there were a lot of people missing. So it's not like Matthew Judon was out there and Christian Barmore and, Jelani Tavai, and like there are a lot of people missing. And Jacoby Brissett took the snap. There were immediately people in his face. He was running for his life to his right and threw the ball not only out of bounds, but over the fence down onto the lower practice fields. Then on the next snap, he got sacked. Then Drake Maye had a scramble. And then there was one time where I'm just looking for it. It was Mafi and Layden Robinson ran into each other. Mafi was pulling, I don't know, I think one of them was supposed to pull one day. They ran into each other. And for a second, I was like, is Matt Patricia still here? Is he? Where is he? Where is he? Like that. That's what it looked like. But again, it's no indictment from me. It's the freaking OTAs. It's a bunch of. They're missing a bunch of people. Like, I'm not panicking about it, but that was definitely my big worry coming out of this OTA practice.
All right. Second thing you didn't like.
Bailey Zappi. I did not think he was good in this practice. He just looks like especially Joe Milton wasn't there, but especially when Milton's on the field and you have Jacoby Brissett, who's a big dude, Drake Maye, who's a big dude, Joe Milton, who's an even bigger dude, and then you have Bailey Zappi. Like, it looks like it looks like it's a punt, pass, and kick competition, and like Bailey's like 2 grades below the guys that he's competing against, or something like that. Like, I didn't think he was very good in this practice, and we'll have to see how that goes.
Isn't it Andy Reid when he took part in that punt?
Yeah, he's gigantic.
Kick, and he was just It was like when Zion Williamson, that high school video when he's got like the 5'3", 75-pound kid on him, and he's just like looking at him. Is this really happening right now? All right, the third and final thing you didn't like about OTAs yesterday.
Just all the absences and injured guys, and it just makes for a rough practice. I mean, just like we were talking about the defense. I mean, no Judon, no Uche, no Godchow, no Tavai, no Barmore, no even like Sam Roberts. So along with all the offensive guys and the flux on the offensive line, it's just, look, there's nothing you can do. It's voluntary, but it's disappointing when you don't get to see more of the guys out there.
All right, Eliot Wolf had an interview this week. I got 2 questions for Greg about that Wolf interview. First, this episode brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, check out Greg and Company, $50 a month at BSJ for the year. That's $50 for the year, not the month, Nick. $50 for the year at BSJ. Of course, Bedard, Giardi, great coverage with the Patriots. Corrales crushing the Celtics as they get ready for the finals coming up in a week from tonight at the TD Garden. We're all excited about that. Again, $50 for the year. All right, Eliot Wolf, quickly, Greg, was on Up and Adams this week. One of the things that he said that stood out to me was that they signed the best offensive tackle in free agency. Sounds like they're very high on Mike Onwenu and are completely committed to this idea of him being a tackle and staying at tackle.
Yeah, I think it's a little convenient. We've heard Eliot say this before, I think. But, yeah, I mean, he also says, best tight end, Hunter Henry. I mean, certainly I would say he's not wrong, but I would say it's like sort of like a half truth. Like, okay, yeah, you got a right tackle, best tackle that was available. Well, no tackles become available, especially anybody who can play left tackle. And so, yeah, you got a right tackle. You should be able to find right tackles. But I understand what he's saying. I don't disagree with it. And I do think that I liked how they spent their money this offseason, locking up their key internal guys. But yeah, I think it's a little PR spin.
Last one for you. Talking about starting Drake Maye when that decision will happen, he says he believes it will be a collaborative approach. How do you think they should approach making that decision? How do you think it all shakes out between the personnel they've got with Ben McAdoo, Van Pelt, Mayo, Wolf? What happens there?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a process, and there's going to be certain checkpoints along the way. Like I got into a discussion with Felger and Holly last night on TV. Everybody, I understand the nature of talk radio and TV sports talk and all that stuff. But everybody's just in a rush to get Maye out there where it's a long process. I mean, even the discussion about Bailey Zappi and what's he still doing here? Well, I mean, what if you're dead set on Drake Maye sitting for half a season? Like, what happens if Jacoby Brissett breaks his ankle in week 1 and Drake Maye's got to go in and not only finish the game, but he's got to start week 2. And now he's starting every game. He's playing in every game his rookie season where that's what you didn't want. Like, I think they'll assess after mandatory minicamp. That's sort of, they'll check in, they'll see where he is. I think that will factor into the Bailey Zappi decision. Do they move on from him or do they hold on to him? And, and I think at the end of the day, it's going to be, I think Wolf's going to direct the discussion about Drake Maye, and Mayo's going to be right there next to him, sort of a 1B, and they are going to rely on Van Pelt and McAdoo, their input on, all right, where is he? Where do you think he's going to be? What should we do with him? I think they're going to lean heavily on what those guys say, and I think they should. And I know, some people think that Van Pelt and McAdoo are like, the worst coaches in the world and definitely going to be Patricia and Judge. But these guys are well respected around the league. They have a lot of experience in this stuff. And Eliot Wolf trusts them, and that's why they're here. And so I think Eliot has a lot of influence on on Mayo, and I think they're going to rely on Van Pelt and McAdoo and then make a decision from there.
I'll just say this. The months leading up to the draft, all of us were talking about how Drake Maye's raw. He's got potential. You need to be patient with him. It's going to take time. In week 2 of OTAs, people are like, why is Bailey Zappi still here?
Right.
We've been talking about this, and some of the people that said those things are asking those questions. Like, we all understood who Drake Maye is. Patience. It's reasonable to be patient with this situation, everybody. So take a deep breath. Relax. He's improving. He was better this week than last week.
Man, we got a long ways to go.
I know, man.
It's May. It's freaking May. It's going to be May.
I mean, relax, for the love of God. He's Greg. I'm Nick. Everybody have a great weekend. Weather's going to be awesome. We'll be back next week. Till then, be well.